My name is Detective Daniel Carter, and I have been working with the Chicago Police Department for 15 years now, and in all those years I have arrested drug dealers and gang members and violent criminals. But there is one case that breaks my heart every time I think about it, because it is not a story about a bad person doing bad things, but about a good person who was pushed into an impossible situation and made a choice that cost him everything. I met Marcus Johnson on a rainy September night in 2018 when we pulled over a van on the south side of Chicago for a routine traffic stop, and when we searched the vehicle, we found $2 million worth of cocaine and heroin hidden in boxes, and Marcus was sitting in the driver's seat, and when we opened the door, he was crying, and he said, "Please, officer, my brother is dying," and I had to do this, and I had no choice. We arrested Marcus that night and brought him to the station, and as I processed him, I could see that he was not like the other drug dealers we arrested, and he had no criminal record, and he worked two legitimate jobs, and he kept saying over and over, "I am so sorry, and I just needed to save my brother," and I asked him what he meant, and Marcus looked at me with desperate eyes and said, "Detective, can I tell you my story, and maybe you will understand?" So I sat down with Marcus in the interrogation room, and I said, "Tell me everything," and over the next 4 hours, Marcus Johnson told me the most heartbreaking story I have ever heard, and it was a story about brotherhood and sacrifice, and about how the American healthcare system can force good people to make terrible choices. Marcus Johnson was born in Chicago in 1990, and he grew up in the Englewood neighborhood, which is one of the poorest and most dangerous areas of the city. And his father, Robert, worked at a factory, and his mother, Angela, was a home health aide, and they did not have much money, but they loved their children and tried to give them a good life. When Marcus was 10 years old, his mother got pregnant again, and everyone was excited, and in 1998, his baby brother Tyler was born, and Marcus remembered holding tiny Tyler in the hospital and promising that he would always protect him and always be there for him, and Marcus loved being a big brother. The family was happy, even though money was tight, and Robert worked long hours, and Angela took care of the home and the boys, and Marcus was a good student and played basketball, and Tyler was a happy baby who loved to laugh. And the brothers were close despite the age difference. But when Marcus was 18 and Tyler was only 8 years old, tragedy struck, and Marcus's parents were driving home from the grocery store one winter evening when their car hit a patch of ice and slid into oncoming traffic, and both Robert and Angela died in the crash, and Marcus and Tyler were left alone. Marcus was devastated, and he did not know what to do, and social services wanted to put Tyler in foster care, but Marcus begged them not to, and he said, "I am 18 now, and I am an adult, and I can take care of my brother, and please do not separate us," and the caseworker was skeptical. But Marcus was so determined, and he got a job and found an apartment and proved that he could provide for Tyler. And they let him have custody. Taking care of an 8-year-old when you are only 18 yourself is not easy. And Marcus had to grow up fast, and he had been planning to go to college on a basketball scholarship, but he gave that up because he needed to work and earn money, and he got a job at a warehouse during the day and a job at a grocery store at night, and he worked 80 hours a week to pay rent and buy food and clothes for Tyler. Marcus made sure Tyler had everything he needed, and he helped Tyler with homework every night, and he went to every parent-teacher conference, and he learned to cook and clean and do laundry and be both brother and parent. And Tyler was a good kid, and he worked hard in school and never caused trouble, and he knew how much Marcus was sacrificing for him. As Tyler grew older, he excelled in school, and he was especially good at science and math, and his teachers said he had real potential, and Marcus encouraged him and bought him books and science kits even though money was tight, and Marcus told Tyler, "You are going to college, and you are going to be somebody, and you are going to have opportunities I never had." Tyler idolized Marcus, and he would tell everyone, "My brother is my hero, and he gave up everything for me, and I am going to make him proud." And the two brothers were incredibly close, and they only had each other in the world, and their bond was unbreakable. When Tyler was in high school, he worked even harder, and he got straight grades, and he joined the science club and volunteered at a hospital, and he told Marcus, "I want to be a doctor, and I want to help people." And Marcus said, "I know you will be a great doctor, and I believe in you." In Tyler's senior year, he applied to colleges, and he was accepted to the University of Chicago with a full academic scholarship, and it was a dream come true, and Tyler was going to be the first person in their family to go to college. And Marcus was so proud he cried, and he said, "Mom and Dad would be so proud of you," and Tyler hugged him and said, "I could not have done this without you." Everything was perfect, and Tyler was going to start college in the fall, and Marcus felt like all his sacrifices had been worth it because his little brother was going to have a better life. But then in June, everything changed. Tyler started getting headaches, and at first they thought it was just stress from graduation and from preparing for college. But the headaches got worse, and Tyler started getting dizzy and nauseous, and Marcus took him to a free clinic. And the doctor said it might be migraines and gave him some pills. But the pills did not help. The headaches got so bad that Tyler could barely function, and one day he collapsed at home, and Marcus rushed him to the emergency room, and they did a CT scan and found something that made Marcus's blood run cold. And the doctor said, "We need to do an MRI, and we need to run more tests because we see something concerning on the scan." The MRI results came back, and the neurologist sat down with Marcus and Tyler and said, "I am sorry to tell you this, but Tyler has a brain tumor, and it is a glioblastoma, which is a very aggressive type of cancer." And Marcus felt like the world stopped spinning, and he said, "What does that mean?" And the doctor said, "It means Tyler needs surgery immediately." The doctor explained that the tumor was growing rapidly, and if they did not remove it soon, it would be fatal. And Tyler had maybe 6 months without treatment, and Marcus said, "Okay, let us do the surgery, and how soon can we schedule it?" And the doctor looked uncomfortable and said, "Mr. Johnson, before we can schedule surgery, we need to discuss payment, and this is a very expensive procedure." Marcus said, "I will pay whatever it costs. Just save my brother." And the doctor said the surgery alone costs about $250,000, and then there is hospitalization and follow-up, treatment and chemotherapy, and radiation, and altogether, we are looking at about $350,000. Marcus felt like he had been punched in the stomach, and he said, "I do not have that kind of money, but I have been working for 10 years, and I can get a loan." And the doctor said, "Do you have health insurance?" And Marcus said no, and his warehouse job did not offer benefits, and the doctor said, "Then the hospital will require a significant down payment before we can proceed with surgery." Marcus said, "How much of a down payment?" And the doctor said, "At least half," and so $175,000, and Marcus said, "I do not have that, and I make $30,000 a year, and I have maybe $5,000 in savings, and is there any way the hospital can work with us?" And the doctor said, "I am sorry, but those are the hospital policies, and without insurance or payment, we cannot proceed." Marcus could not believe what he was hearing, and he said, "So you are telling me my brother is going to die because I do not have money?" And the doctor said, "I understand this is difficult, but there are sometimes charitable organizations that can help, and I can give you some information." And Marcus took the papers, but he knew it was hopeless. Tyler sat there quietly during this conversation, and he was only 18 years old, and he had just graduated high school and was supposed to start college in 2 months, and now he was being told he had brain cancer. And Marcus looked at Tyler and saw the fear in his eyes. And Marcus said, "Do not worry, little brother, and I will figure this out, and I promise I will get you that surgery." Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus tried everything he could think of, and he applied to every charity and foundation, and he called every number on the list the doctor gave him, but everyone said the same thing, and they said, "We get thousands of requests, and we have limited funds, and we cannot help everyone." And some said they would put Tyler on a waiting list, but the waiting list was months long, and Tyler did not have months. Marcus started a GoFundMe campaign and posted it on social media and asked everyone he knew to donate and share it, and people were generous and donated what they could. But after 2 weeks, he had only raised $15,000, and he was still more than $300,000 short. Marcus sold everything he owned, and he sold his car and his furniture and his TV and anything of value, and he borrowed money from every person he knew, and he took out payday loans and maxed out credit cards, and altogether, he scraped together another $20,000. But it still was not nearly enough. Meanwhile, Tyler's condition was getting worse, and the headaches were more frequent and more severe, and he started having seizures and his vision was blurring. And he could barely get out of bed, and Marcus would sit by his bedside and hold his hand and say, "I am working on it and I am going to get you help." And Tyler would say, "I know you are trying, Marcus, but maybe this is just how it is supposed to be." One night, Marcus came home from his second job and found Tyler crying in his room, and Marcus said, "What is wrong?" And Tyler said, "Marcus, I know. You do not have the money, and I know you have been killing yourself trying to find it, and I do not want you to destroy your life trying to save mine, and maybe it is time to accept that I am not going to make it." Marcus felt his heart break, and he knelt down next to Tyler's bed, and he said, "Do not you dare give up." And Mom and Dad asked me to take care of you, and I made them a promise. And I am not going to let you die, and I will find a way. And Tyler said, "How?" And there is no more time, and Marcus said, "I do not know yet, but I will find a way." That night, Marcus could not sleep, and he lay in bed thinking about Tyler dying and about failing to save him and about breaking the promise he made to his parents, and he felt desperate and hopeless, and he did not know what to do. Marcus knew that the South Side was full of drug dealers and gang members, and he had always stayed away from that world because he wanted to keep Tyler safe and set a good example. But now, in his desperation, he started thinking about the money those dealers had, and he thought about how they drove expensive cars and wore expensive jewelry and had more money than they knew what to do with. Marcus knew a guy from the neighborhood named Damian Reed, who was a mid-level dealer, and Damian had tried to recruit Marcus years ago, but Marcus had refused because he did not want anything to do with drugs. But now Marcus was desperate, and he thought maybe Damian could help. The next day, Marcus went to find Damian, and he found him outside a corner store, and Marcus said, "I need to talk to you." And Damian said, "Marcus Johnson and I have not seen you in years, and what do you want?" And Marcus swallowed his pride and said, "I need money, and a lot of it, and I will do anything." Damian raised his eyebrows and said, "Anything, and that is interesting. And why do you need money?" And Marcus explained about Tyler and the brain tumor and the surgery costs, and Damian listened and then said, "That is rough, man, and how much do you need?" And Marcus said, $350,000. Damian whistled and said, "That is a lot of money. And what makes you think I would just give you that kind of cash?" And Marcus said, "I am not asking for charity." And I said, "I will do anything, and I will work for you, and I will do whatever job you need done." And Damian smiled and said, "You have always been straight, Marcus, and you never wanted anything to do with my business, but now you are desperate, and desperate men make mistakes." Marcus said, "I do not care about mistakes, and my brother is dying, and I need that money." And Damian said, "Okay, I might have a job for you, but it is dangerous." And Marcus said, "I do not care." And Damian said, "If you get caught, you are looking at serious federal time." And Marcus said, I do not care." Damian explained that he needed someone to transport a shipment of cocaine and heroin worth about $2 million, and the shipment needed to go from a warehouse on the south side to a distribution point on the west side, and normally Damian used his regular drivers, but the police had been watching his operation closely, and he needed someone clean and someone without a criminal record who would not raise suspicion. Damian said, "If you do this for me, I will give you $400,000, and that is more than enough for your brother's surgery." And Marcus said, "When?" And Damian said, "Tomorrow night." And Marcus hesitated because he knew this was wrong, and he knew it was illegal, and he knew he could go to prison. But then he thought about Tyler dying, and he said, "Okay, I will do it." Damian said, "Good, and be at the warehouse tomorrow at 9 p.m. And Marcus went home and did not tell Tyler what he was planning because he did not want Tyler to know that he was about to commit a crime. The next day, Marcus went to work as usual and tried to act normal, but inside he was terrified, and he had never broken the law before. And he had always been a good person who worked hard and followed the rules. But now he was about to become a drug trafficker, and he told himself it is just one time, and it is to save Tyler, and that makes it okay. That evening, Marcus went to the hospital to visit Tyler, and Tyler was very weak and could barely stay awake, and Marcus held his hand and said, "Tyler, I want you to know that I love you more than anything in this world, and you are my brother and my best friend, and I am going to take care of everything." And Tyler smiled weakly and said, "I love you too, Marcus, and you are my hero." Marcus left the hospital with tears in his eyes, and he knew that what he was about to do could destroy his life, but he also knew that if he did nothing, Tyler would die, and he could not live with that. At 9 p.m., Marcus arrived at the warehouse, and Damien was waiting with several other men, and there was a white van parked nearby, and Damien said, "The merchandise is in the van, and you need to drive it to this address," and he gave Marcus a piece of paper with an address on the west side, and Damien said, "Do not stop and do not speed, and just drive normally and deliver the boxes and then come back here, and I will have your money." Marcus got in the van, and his hands were shaking as he started the engine, and he pulled out of the warehouse and started driving, and the streets were dark and mostly empty, and Marcus kept checking his mirrors, expecting police cars, but everything seemed quiet. Marcus had been driving for about 20 minutes when he saw flashing lights behind him, and his heart stopped, and he thought about running, but he knew that would make things worse. And so he pulled over, and a police officer approached the driver's side window and said, "License and registration, please." Marcus handed over his documents, and the officer said, "This is a routine stop, and your taillight is out," and Marcus said, "Okay, I did not know that," and the officer looked at him suspiciously and said, "What are you doing out here at this time of night?" And Marcus said, "Just making a delivery for work." And the officer said, "What kind of delivery?" And Marcus said, "Just some boxes." The officer asked Marcus to step out of the van, and Marcus did, and then the officer said, "I am going to need to search the vehicle." And Marcus felt panic rising in his chest, and he said, "Do you have a warrant?" And the officer said, "I do not need a warrant if I have probable cause and I smell something suspicious." The officer opened the back of the van and started looking through the boxes, and when he opened the first one and saw the packages of cocaine, his face hardened, and he said, "Get on the ground now," and Marcus collapsed to his knees and started crying and saying, "Please, I can explain. And my brother is dying, and I needed the money for his surgery." The officer handcuffed Marcus and called for backup, and within minutes, there were 3 more police cars and a drug task force unit, and they searched the van thoroughly and found package after package of cocaine and heroin, and one of the officers said this is easily $2 million worth of product, and Marcus just sat on the curb with his head in his hands crying. They brought Marcus to the station, and that is when I first met him, and as I read him his rights and processed his arrest, I could see that he was not like the hardened criminals we usually dealt with. And he had no criminal record, and he had been working 2 jobs and paying taxes and living a clean life, and I asked him why he did it, and Marcus told me about Tyler. Marcus explained everything, and he told me about raising Tyler alone since he was 18, and about Tyler getting into the University of Chicago, and about the brain tumor, and about the $350,000 surgery, and about trying every legal way to get the money and failing. And he said, "Detective, I know what I did was wrong, but my brother is going to die without that surgery, and I could not just sit there and watch him die." I listened to Marcus's story, and I felt terrible for him, but I also knew that the law was the law, and he had been caught transporting $2 million worth of illegal drugs, and that was a serious federal offense. And I said, "Marcus, I understand your situation, but you have to understand that you are facing major charges here, and this is federal drug trafficking, and you could be looking at 20 years in prison." Marcus started crying again, and he said, "I know. And I know I messed up, but what was I supposed to do? And the system failed my brother, and no hospital would help him, and no charity would help him, and I tried everything legal, and nothing worked. And so I made a choice, and I chose my brother over the law." I asked Marcus if he wanted a lawyer, and he said yes, and we provided him with a public defender. And Marcus was held without bail because the charges were so serious, and the next day the news about his arrest hit the media, and the local news station ran a story about a man arrested for drug trafficking. But then a reporter dug deeper into the story and found out about Tyler, and about the brain tumor, and about Marcus raising him alone, and about the desperate attempt to save his brother's life, and suddenly the story changed. And it was no longer just about a drug dealer getting caught, but about a brother's love, and about the failures of the American healthcare system. The story went viral on social media, and people were outraged that Marcus had been forced into this situation, and a hashtag started trending called Save Tyler, and people from all over the country started donating to Tyler's GoFundMe campaign, and within 48 hours, over $300,000 had been raised. Tyler was in the hospital when he found out about Marcus's arrest, and he was devastated, and he kept saying, "This is all my fault, and my brother is in jail because of me, and if I just die then he can go free," and the doctors had to sedate him because he was so distraught and his condition worsened from the stress. But because of the money that was raised, Tyler was finally able to have his surgery, and the hospital agreed to proceed. Once the GoFundMe funds were transferred and the surgery was scheduled for the following week, and Tyler begged to see Marcus before the surgery, but the jail would not allow it because Marcus was being held on federal charges. The day of Tyler's surgery, Marcus sat in his jail cell and prayed, and he had not prayed since his parents died, but he prayed that Tyler would survive and that the surgery would be successful. And he told himself that even if he spent the rest of his life in prison, it would be worth it if Tyler lived. The surgery took 9 hours, and it was incredibly risky because the tumor was wrapped around critical parts of Tyler's brain, and the surgeon had to be extremely careful. And there were moments during the surgery when Tyler's vital signs became unstable, and the medical team thought they might lose him, but they managed to stabilize him and continue. When the surgery was finally over, the doctor came out and told Tyler's aunt, who had flown in from Atlanta, that the surgery had been successful, and they had removed 90% of the tumor, and Tyler would need chemotherapy and radiation to get the rest. But his prognosis was good, and he had a 70% chance of full recovery. Tyler's aunt immediately called the jail and asked them to tell Marcus the good news, and when I went to Marcus's cell and told him that Tyler's surgery had been successful, Marcus broke down and cried, and he said, "Thank you, God, and thank you for saving my brother." And I asked Marcus how he was doing, and he said, "Detective, I am facing 20 years in prison, but my brother is alive, and that is all that matters to me." Over the next few weeks, Tyler recovered slowly in the hospital, and he kept asking about Marcus, and he kept saying, "I need to see my brother, and I need to tell him I am okay." And finally, after Tyler was stable enough, the judge agreed to allow one supervised visit at the hospital. I was there the day they brought Marcus to see Tyler, and Marcus was in handcuffs and leg shackles and a prison jumpsuit, and when he walked into Tyler's hospital room, Tyler started crying and said, "Marcus, I am so sorry, and this is all my fault." And Marcus rushed to Tyler's bedside and hugged him as much as he could with the restraints and said, "Do not ever say that, and you are my brother, and I would do it again 1,000 times. Tyler said, "But you are going to prison because of me," and Marcus said, "I do not care about prison, and all I care about is that you are alive, and you are going to beat this cancer, and you are going to go to college, and you are going to become a doctor, and you are going to have the life Mom and Dad dreamed for you." Tyler said, "I do not want that life without you, and I need you, Marcus." And Marcus said, "I will always be with you, and even if I am in prison, I will write you letters every day, and you can visit me, and we will still be brothers, and nothing can change that." And Tyler held on to Marcus and cried, and the guards had to pull them apart when the visit time was up. The case against Marcus was straightforward, and he had been caught red-handed with $2 million worth of drugs, and the federal prosecutor wanted to make an example of him. And the prosecutor said, "This is a serious case of drug trafficking, and we cannot show leniency just because the defendant had a sympathetic reason." But Marcus's public defender argued that Marcus had no criminal history and that he had been driven to this act by desperate circumstances and that he was not a danger to society, and the lawyer asked the court to consider the context and to show mercy. The case attracted national attention, and civil rights groups and healthcare reform advocates got involved, and they argued that Marcus's case highlighted the cruelty of the American healthcare system and how it forces people into impossible choices, and they organized protests outside the courthouse, demanding leniency for Marcus. Tyler also wrote a letter to the judge, and in it he explained that Marcus had raised him alone since he was 8 years old and had sacrificed everything for him and had worked 2 jobs to provide for him and had never asked for anything in return. And Tyler wrote that Marcus was a hero, not a criminal, and that he should not be punished for trying to save his brother's life. The trial took place 4 months after Marcus's arrest, and Tyler was well enough to attend, and he sat in the courtroom in a wheelchair because he was still weak from the surgery and chemotherapy. And when Marcus was brought in wearing handcuffs, he looked at Tyler and mouthed, "I love you," and Tyler started crying. The prosecutor presented the evidence, and it was overwhelming, and they had the drugs, and they had Marcus's confession, and they had testimony from the arresting officers, and there was no question that Marcus had committed the crime, and the prosecutor asked for the maximum sentence of 20 years. Then Marcus's lawyer called Tyler to the witness stand, and Tyler wheeled himself up to the stand. And he was sworn in, and the lawyer asked him to tell the court about his relationship with Marcus, and Tyler spoke for 20 minutes, and he told the court everything, and he talked about how Marcus had been more than a brother, and how he had been a parent and a provider and a protector. Tyler said that Marcus had given up his dreams of college and basketball so that Tyler could have a home and food and clothes and an education, and Tyler said Marcus worked 16 hours a day so I could have a good life, and he never complained, and he never asked for anything. And when I got sick, he tried everything he could to save me, and when the system failed me, he made a desperate choice. Tyler looked directly at the judge and said, "Your Honor, my brother is the best man I have ever known, and he made one mistake in 28 years. And he made that mistake because he loves me and because he could not watch me die, and if you send him to prison for 20 years, you are punishing a man for loving his brother too much." There was not a dry eye in the courtroom, and even the prosecutor looked uncomfortable, and the judge called a recess, and when court resumed, the judge said, "This is one of the most difficult cases I have ever presided over, because the law is clear, but justice is complicated." The judge said, "Marcus Johnson, you committed a serious federal crime, and you knowingly transported $2 million worth of illegal drugs, and those drugs could have destroyed countless lives and ruined families and contributed to the opioid epidemic that is killing thousands of Americans every year. And I cannot ignore that." But the judge continued and said, "I also cannot ignore the context, and you are not a career criminal, and you have no criminal history, and you have spent the last 10 years working hard and raising your brother and being a productive member of society. And you were driven to this crime by desperation and by a healthcare system that values profit over human life." The judge said, "I am going to sentence you to 12 years in federal prison, but I am recommending that you be eligible for parole after serving 8 years, and I am also recommending that you be placed in a minimum security facility where you can continue your education and participate in rehabilitation programs. And Mr. Johnson, I hope that you will use this time to reflect on your choices and to find legal ways to advocate for healthcare reform." Marcus stood up and said, "Your Honor, I accept my sentence, and I know I broke the law, and I am not asking for sympathy, but I want you to know that I would do it again because my brother is alive, and that is worth more to me than my freedom." And the judge nodded and said, "I understand, Mr. Johnson, and I truly do." They took Marcus away that day, and he began serving his sentence at a federal correctional facility in Illinois, and Tyler was heartbroken. But he was also determined to honor his brother's sacrifice, and he recovered from his surgery and started chemotherapy and radiation and fought hard to beat the cancer. Tyler started college the following year, and even though he was still undergoing treatment, he did not want to waste the opportunity that Marcus had given him, and he studied hard and got good grades, and he told everyone about his brother and about what Marcus had done for him. Tyler also started an organization called Marcus's Promise, and the goal of the organization was to help families who could not afford medical treatment, and they raised money and provided grants to people facing similar situations to what Tyler and Marcus had faced, and within 2 years they had helped over 50 families. Meanwhile, Marcus served his time quietly, and he participated in every educational program available. And he got his GED and then took college courses through a correspondence program, and he studied criminal justice and healthcare policy, and he wanted to understand the system that had failed his brother. Tyler visited Marcus every week without fail, and he would tell Marcus about school and about the organization and about all the people they were helping. And Marcus was so proud. And he would say, "You are doing what I could not do, and you are changing the system legally, and that makes me so happy." After Marcus had served 7 years, he came up for parole, and Tyler testified at the parole hearing, and he told the board that Marcus had been a model prisoner and that he had transformed his pain into purpose and that he deserved a second chance. And the parole board agreed, and Marcus was released after serving 7 years of his 12-year sentence. The day Marcus was released, Tyler was waiting outside the prison, and when Marcus walked through the gates, Tyler ran to him and hugged him, and they both cried, and Marcus said, "I missed you so much." And Tyler said, "I missed you too. And I am so proud of you." And Marcus said, "I am proud of you too, and look at you, and you beat cancer, and you are in college, and you are helping people." Marcus had to complete 5 years of supervised probation, but he was free, and he got a job working for Tyler's organization, and he helped manage the grants and assisted families navigating the healthcare system, and he also started speaking publicly about his experience and about the need for healthcare reform. I stayed in touch with Marcus over the years, and I watched him rebuild his life, and I watched Tyler thrive and graduate from college and get accepted to medical school, and I saw how the two brothers remained incredibly close and how they had turned their tragedy into something positive. Today, Marcus is 35 years old, and he has completed his probation, and he works full-time for Marcus's Promise, which has now helped over 300 families afford medical treatment, and he has testified before Congress about health care reform and has become an advocate for people facing medical bankruptcy. Tyler is 25 years old, and he is in his 2nd year of medical school, specializing in oncology, and he wants to treat brain cancer patients, and he says that his goal is to make sure that no family has to go through what he and Marcus went through, and he visits schools and talks to young people about the importance of education and perseverance. Marcus and Tyler live together in a small apartment in Chicago, and they have dinner together every night, and they talk about their parents and about how proud their parents would be, and Tyler still calls Marcus his hero, and Marcus still says that saving Tyler was the best decision he ever made. I think about this case often, and I think about how Marcus Johnson made a choice that was illegal but understandable. And he knew he was breaking the law, and he knew he would face consequences, but he did it anyway because his brother's life was worth more to him than his own freedom. This case taught me that the world is not black and white, and that sometimes good people do bad things for good reasons, and that our healthcare system is broken when a man has to become a criminal to save his brother's life, and that we need to fix a system that forces families to choose between bankruptcy and death. Marcus Johnson served 7 years in prison for trying to save his brother, and some people say he got what he deserved because he broke the law, and other people say he is a hero who sacrificed everything for his brother, and I do not know which side is right, but I know that Marcus's love for Tyler was real and powerful, and that love drove him to do something desperate. If you are watching this, I want you to think about what you would do in Marcus's position. And if your brother or sister or child was dying and you had no legal way to save them, would you break the law, and would you risk everything? And I cannot answer that question for you, but I understand why Marcus answered yes. Thank you for listening to this story. And if it moved you, please share it and think about how we can change a system that creates these impossible choices. And if you want to hear more stories, subscribe, because there are many more that need to be told.